Florida lands Elijah Badger. I love this move for the Gators. How much of a difference will that actually make, though? Because Florida has the toughest schedule in college football. I don't know if there's a close second. I'm sure the comment section can find me a second place finisher in that department. It's pretty tough to top Florida's schedule. It's incredibly brutal, as we'll get to, but the Badger edition is a really good piece for this offense. I think if the Gators unlock their passing game with Graham Mertz this year, Elijah Badger can be a 1,000-yard receiver. I said going into his transfer recruitment that he was the most impactful player remaining in the portal. And I think that's going to bear itself out on the field this year. You pair him with Trey Wilson and Khalil Jackson as the wide receivers, and you got Wilson in the slot, Jackson on the outside, Badger on the other side, and suddenly you have a formidable trio of receivers for Graham Mertz to throw the ball to. And certainly last year, Ricky Pearsall was an excellent weapon. Elijah Badger is a different type of weapon, though. I think this is someone who can not just stretch the field vertically, but give you a little bit more in 50-50 situations. Maybe I haven't watched enough Ricky Pearsall film, but to me, he seems kind of like Deebo Samuel adjacent. And Badger's a different type of receiver, and I think this is a bona fide, certified, number one caliber guy. And I love this addition for an offense that has had its moments, shall we say, with Graham Mertz at the helm, hasn't always been prolific pushing it down the field. I really think this is a good move. And I think Badger can come in to the SEC and have a really good year. Now, does this make Florida a dramatically better team? Not dramatically, makes them a better offense at the very least. And you're going to go up against some great offenses. So, for those who have forgotten Florida's schedule, let's bring out the Titanic violin music here. They open with Miami in Gainesville. That is one of my favorite non-conference games of the college football season. Florida's making the rounds in the state of Florida. They play Miami, they play UCF later, and they play Florida State. They're really making sure they get, I'm surprised FIU isn't on the schedule. Maybe they should be, or FAU for that matter. But you start with Miami. That's not easy. Then you play Samford. Okay, that's easy. Then you host Texas A&M. Not easy. Interesting game, though. Interesting game. Because you have Mike Elko, year 1, versus Billy Napier, year 3. Interesting. Very interesting. Then they go at Mississippi State, and then they host UCF. Those better be 2 wins. I'll just say that. And when you look up and down this lineup of teams, you've got some prolific offenses. I don't know that any of them are actually in the first 5 games. Is Connor Wegman going to pop at Texas A&M? Is Cam Ward, who I think is very good, going to kind of have the reins taken off of him in a Mario Cristobal offense at Miami? We shall see. UCF, don't sleep on that game. It's in Gainesville. It's in the cozy confines of the swamp. You can't sleep on the Knights, though. They are doing a lot of really good things in the transfer portal themselves. But then the challenges arrive. At Tennessee, host Kentucky for homecoming. By the way, Brock Vandagriff will be the quarterback for Kentucky. Nico Iamaleava will be the quarterback for Tennessee. Georgia, Florida, of course, is going to be played. And yeah, Carson Beck and company. Look, Brock Bowers, Ladd McConkey, great players. I have a sneaky suspicion that Georgia's going to have some weapons on the perimeter for Carson Beck to throw the football to. Quinn Ewers, as they go at Texas the following week. LSU, oh dear, Ole Miss, and then at Florida State. Just look at the lineup of quarterbacks that you're going up against, and that explains perfectly why I like this Elijah Badger move when you're going up against this schedule with Graham Mertz. Tennessee, Nico Iamaleava. Kentucky, Brock Vandagriff. Relatively unproven, but a lot of potential there. Georgia, Carson Beck, maybe the best in all of college football. Quinn Ewers, Texas, also perhaps the best in all of college football. Probably second. I like Carson Beck. LSU, Garrett Nussmeier. Okay, that's a little bit more of a question. Ole Miss, Jackson Dart. No questions there. And Florida State, DJ Uiagalelei. Probably the weakest quarterback you face in this entire slate, depending on what Iamaleava and Vandagriff are able to accomplish. So if you're going up against those teams with a defense that, as Brandon Olson of Locked On Gators has talked about before, has some questions, they have made improvements, they are not going to be an elite unit. They just are not. You're going to have to score points. And Graham Mertz, look, he's steady. He's solid. He's fairly consistent. But is he explosive? Is he dynamic? Is he carrying you? No, he's a guy who needs to be supported. Think closer to the lines of Kirk Cousins in the NFL than Josh Allen, per se. Not someone who you're running your offense through, someone you're running your offense with who you hope can execute. Where has Kirk Cousins been most effective? In Minnesota, when he had who? Justin Jefferson. Elijah Badger is not Justin Jefferson. I'm not making that silly comparison because that might be the best wide receiver on the face of the planet right now. But what I am saying is that when you've got a quarterback who is serviceable, solid, capable, he is elevated significantly by the weapons around him, rather than the inverse can often be true in which a quarterback makes his receivers better. This is an instance where I think the receivers can make the quarterback better, and Badger brings that to the table. So I really like that move for Florida. And look, I wouldn't be surprised if you feel a little bit better having Elijah Badger there after watching the first half of the season against Kentucky, for instance, who's not going to be a bad football team. I don't know if they're going to be a great football team. They certainly won't be terrible under Mark Stoops. And you just keep going down the list and say, well, I'd rather have an extra weapon than not have one. And the schedule, just having both Miami and Florida State in the non-conference with UCF is bonkers, frankly. It's bonkers. And if you're Billy Napier, you have to be thinking, who put together this schedule that is going to make me look like I'm a worse coach than I am, that's going to make my team look like a worse team than we are? Because that's what you're going to have. If Florida goes through and wins, let's say 1, 2, 3, 4, if they win 5 games, I honestly think they're doing great. We'll call it good. Why don't we call that good? If they make a bowl game, give Billy Napier an extension. That's how difficult a situation this is. But Elijah Badger certainly does lessen the blow. Another transfer to be aware of, not a huge name necessarily, but one to just keep your eye on, King Mack. 2023 4-star safety, originally from Fort Lauderdale, speaking of Florida, committed to play at Penn State, did not play a lot last year, just 70 snaps. PFF was impressed on the 70 snaps that he did log for the Nittany Lions, but he is transferring to Alabama. Remember, this is an Alabama team that lost a bunch of players to the transfer portal. A lot of them. They did, once upon a time, begin the process, and they are continuing the process of backfilling those losses. I think King Mack is at some level a replacement for Peyton Woodyard, who transferred out and went to go play up at Oregon, where I don't think he's going to start this year. Might be a rotation guy, potentially. But that's what King Mack is providing. I texted Luke Robinson of Locked On Alabama about this and said, look, he adds much needed depth, has got the playmaking potential, has got the capability. And Kane Womack, the defensive coordinator, former head coach of South Alabama, he's looking for pieces like this to build, not just for this year, but for next year. And it's weird to say. It's also realistic to say Bama might be underrated. Bama might be getting slept on. I think this is going to be the worst Kalen DeBoer Alabama coach team that we ever see. I think that's going to be but what does worst Kalen DeBoer Alabama team look like? That's like saying, what's the worst dessert you could make with chocolate and peanut butter? Well, just putting them together would be bland and boring. Still tastes good. Still might be better than some random concoction over there. But if you then, give it a little bit of time and put some work into the chocolate and peanut butter, eventually you can make a chocolate peanut butter pie that is just a heavenly, delectably rich and decadent sweet treat. So I think Bama could be at least, bare minimum, they're an 8-win team. That's like the bottom falls out this year. And I don't know if King Mack makes a huge impact, but they're just starting to load up the depth, the talent, and I'm seeing it. And here's the other thing, and I'll get out of here on this. The questions about Kalen DeBoer when he first got to Alabama were, how is he going to be able to recruit? He didn't recruit well at Washington. He's going to recruit. Is he going to bring in high caliber players? Well, so far, looking pretty darn good, and I like the addition of King Mack from Penn State. Might not make a huge impact this year, but I think it's telling about the defensive staff they put together and what they can be going forward. Appreciate everyone listening. I will see you next time. And until then, hope you have a wonderful rest of your day.